Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Reebok Studio Show. My name is Krista Gun, and today, if you want to learn all about exporting and how you can export your products to the international market, or how you can get started and start thinking about it. Maybe you're not ready to export now, but you're just trying to explore some ideas, right? So these days, really, we're living in a global village. So today, I have the pleasure of inviting someone that I know and someone that I met in a past webinar that we were both on to come and talk about the export market. So he's very well versed in the export market. So if you have questions or you are simply curious about how it really works and what you need to do or to prepare to get your products out there, this is the live stream that you must not miss, right? So one of the more important things is he's going to share with us practical strategies and get you started if you're really interested in exporting your products out there. So without much further ado, let me bring on Mr. Yeoh Seng Hooi, who's a business consultant, a coach, and an IPO consultant. So he will share with us all you need to know about the export market and what it takes to succeed as an exporter of your products. Okay, let me just bring him on. Hi,
Krista.
Seng Hooi. Hi.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Morning. So today we're going to talk all about the export market, which is your specialty.
Well, I've had my fair share of experience, in the export, in the exporting side of business. I think I started doing or getting involved in exports, since the I would say maybe the early '90s. Yeah, you know. So
Okay, so
it's
you have
been
lots of
it's
experience
been
in it.
I would have a fair share of experience in terms of being involved in different sectors that basically, from apparel to stationery to so different types of export related businesses. So hopefully we can share with your audience today to see how they can go about embarking on an export drive, or let's say to begin exporting.
Yeah. So before we get started, can you let us know a little bit about yourself and what you do as a consultant and a coach?
Okay. Well, I have been involved in various types of businesses. Um, I was with a public sector agency as well. I was with a bank. I was with a venture capital company, and then I was running businesses. I took a stationery company public back in the mid '90s. That's when I started my export marketing, you know, experience. And then also after that, I was with a VC. I was also in apparel, running an apparel export oriented apparel company. So also with some trade organizations, and then of course my involvement with SAMENTA has been as one of the co-founders back in 1986. So that's a very long time. We were actually the first SME association, to be incorporated. Currently, I'm doing some consulting of my own, uh, a small boutique consulting setup. I also do some business coaching under the Vistage platform, whereby I coach a group of SME entrepreneurs. So my passion in terms of being involved with SMEs actually started when I first came back from the States. I was working for the Penang Development Corporation. So we published the first directory of local sporting industry. So that's how I've been very keen to assist and to see how I can help to contribute to the growth and development of SMEs, and that has never waned or stopped. It's continued since I started working until today. Yeah, so that's pretty much a very short history of what I've been doing. Yeah, a couple of years ago also I took I was the IPO consultant of a leisure business. I took them public. Uh, Basically at the Catalist market in Singapore as well. Yeah, so I get involved in facilitating the growth of SMEs in many ways. Yeah.
Has all this been very much part of your growing up? I mean, it seems that you're very keen in helping businesses thrive and prosper in so many areas, starting from 1986 when you were co-founded SAMENTA. So now I found out something interesting. I didn't know about that.
Okay. Well, actually, the Samantha idea came from my former boss or my mentor. So, but because I was working with him, so I was involved in that whole exercise. But my parents were not in business. They were just working class, people. So there was not that legacy of a family business or whatever. It's just that I guess when I first started like I said my business journey, my working journey with BDC, and then I was assigned to see how I could help promote the supporting and ancillary industries. At that time, we were looking at basically improving the linkages between the SMEs and the multinationals. So I think that's what spurred my interest, and like I said, it's never gone away. In fact, it got further accentuated. It just grew from there. And I've never stopped. Even when I was in banking, I was also dealing with SMEs, with venture capital also. But again, I don't know. Maybe it's just uh, part of my life. I mean, something that just happened. Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
then we start with this. What is exporting all about?
Okay. First thing is that I think let me just try to put it differently. It's like as per my uh, so-called topic or the theme is that it's like first thing is like why export, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because it's like I think people know what exporting is all about. I mean, in a broad sense, it's like okay, when you're selling beyond the country, you're supposed to be exporting, lah. I mean, so I mean that's in a nutshell. Okay, like whether you're selling goods or services, even actually selling across the causeway to Singapore is also considered exports. I mean, or even selling into Thailand is considered exports as long as it goes beyond the domestic market. It's actually exports. But I think what is more important is that see a lot of people ask this question very frequently. It's like why export? Like why do you need to consider exporting? Yeah? I think there are three fundamental reasons or factors which would sort of encourage people to go into exports. Yeah? One is of course uh, customer diversification, right? Because if you're just looking at selling to the domestic market, you're just, especially in the case of Malaysia, you're just confined to, say, a population of 33, 34, 35, whatever the current figures are, million people. So, to put all your eggs into one basket, say, if you want to grow further, then people would like to look at, hey, can I consider a bigger oyster out there, which is the whole world, uh, the entire globe. So now I'm looking at a more expansive market size. So it's not just confined to Malaysia. Yeah. So it's the first reason is usually diversification of our customers, and at the same time also uh, the other main reason is also to look at offsetting seasonal fluctuations. What do I mean by that? Is that like let's say, for example, uh, if you are in the back to school business, okay, like in those days, we were in the stationery business. So our peak was actually towards year end, right? Because school starts in Malaysia, say in January. So our peak business was normally towards the last quarter of the year because that's the time when you prepare and you sell so that kids will be buying all this stuff during the year end. So, but let's say, for example, if I start exporting, if I'm selling to, let's say, the US market or the Australian market, they've got different back to school seasons. Yeah. So, like in Australia, you probably have a back to school around, uh, March, February, March. If you're selling to the UK, US market, you're looking at, you know, August, September. If you're selling to the Middle East, again, a different period, around July, So the thing is that, so I mean, the August. So the thing is that once you have diversification, that means you're able to actually plug in into the different seasons. So which means that it gives you a smoother flow as far as your turnover, your sales is concerned. So when you have the exports in place, then you don't just have to look at a seasonal high in the fourth quarter, right? Yeah. So that's one of the reasons when it comes to market or customer diversification, and also uh, you're not dependent on a particular market. You see, like let's say if you're, for example, if you're selling in Malaysia, and let's say due to the current lockdown, and the domestic market has been slumping, but you see the overseas markets have already opened up. Let's say in Europe, in US, China, so the thing is that, see, when these when these countries have actually, or these markets have opened up, so that allows Malaysian companies or businesses to actually leverage by exporting to these countries. And you can see that from the trade figures. Right? I think the latest trade figures have actually shown very clearly that the industrial production index that was just released for August shows that exports were positive. I think it grew at about 7.6%, if I'm not mistaken. But for the domestic market, it was still negative. So you could see that, while the domestic market is still languishing, export was actually providing the impetus for growth. So that is already a big reason. If you're not just dependent on one particular market. The other main reason why people would look at exports is also, again, from the production side, is due to economies of scale. I'm sure you've heard of this expression before. For export orders, they're normally larger in size. So when you have larger orders or longer runs, that allows you to have economies of scale, which means that your cost of production per unit becomes lower. So these are some of the pluses. Yeah. And the third factor, which is actually an important consideration for why people would look at exporting, is, of course, one is forex, okay, meaning for foreign exchange. So, for example, let's say if you are buying your products or you're buying your raw materials or components in US dollars, but if you're just selling everything in ringgit, then it's actually you're going to do a lot of serious hedging because you're subject to the foreign exchange risk, right? Because you're buying in dollars, but you're selling in ringgit, because you're only selling to the domestic market. But if today you're also exporting, let's say if you're selling to, and most of the exports, even though you're selling to Europe, excuse me, they are usually also denominated in dollars. So if you are actually exporting, and if you are obtaining US dollars, so it means that now you have somewhat of what we call a natural hedge, meaning that now you've got the proceeds in dollars. So if you're buying in dollars, you're not subject to so much of the forex risk now because you've got dollars coming in and then you've got dollars going out. So that's one. Okay, that's one advantage from the financial angle if you're looking at why you should consider exporting. Okay, otherwise you'll be subject to the forex fluctuations. For example, if you are buying in dollars for your raw materials or your inputs and things like that, then if you are selling to the domestic market, if the ringgit weakens, then of course that will affect your margins. You'll suffer maybe a significant erosion in your margin. So this is one financial advantage. The other one is, of course, as you know, if you sell to the domestic market, normally it is you're going to give credit terms, right, to your customers. So 60 days, 90 days, or whatever, and then maybe even longer. In the case of when you're exporting, again, I use usually. Of course, sometimes the customers may not be paying you on that basis anymore, but usually you are still able to get letters of credit, LCs as they call them. So with the letters of credit, then you're not subject to such risk because your payments are guaranteed by the bank if you are actually receiving letters of credit. Okay, so these are all the pluses that helps to again uh, give you certain advantages from the financial angle when you're looking at exporting. Okay, um, yeah,
Okay, so
and
we've looked at some reasons why people need to export, right? So it always sounds like everyone is excited when you think of the export market. So, but based on your years of experience, I'm sure there are advantages and disadvantages, right?
yeah, true,
There are
true,
some
true,
pitfalls or some things
true,
which
true,
maybe
true.
people like to focus on the good stuff, but we
Yeah,
try to bring in a very balanced view, lah, right?
yeah,
So what are some of the things that they should also be aware of? Well, I noted down that some of the reasons for why we need to export or why people should consider export is that customer diversification, okay,
yeah, yeah,
offsetting certain season fluctuations, and what um, we believe that what is right now happening here, maybe in another part of the world, we can still continue to sell, right? So different seasons,
true, true.
smoother flows, economies of scale, and of course, forex. But we know that not everything is like, perfect, right? So in a
Sure,
not so perfect
sure.
world, what are
Yeah.
some of the pitfalls or some of the issues
Okay.
that people should also be aware of?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good question. It's very relevant. So this all depends on, like I said, is that again, I always advise SMEs who want to do exporting to the journey is the planning is very important. Huh? Can't go away from the scout motto, be prepared. Okay, so it's very important to actually for you to understand. That means if you're not prepared well, then some of these so-called pitfalls, like what you mentioned, may happen. Okay, okay. Some of my experiences in the past is that you can see that prior to the pandemic days, people tend to just jump onto the next trade fair and then bring their bags and then boom, then they will just go and attend that particular fair. So I think again, pros and cons. If you don't prepare well, and if you just go and attend a trade fair, spend all that money, but if you don't get your house in order, again, I'll go through the motions shortly, but just very briefly said, if you don't get your house in order first, and you just go and participate in the trade fair, you may actually fall flat in many ways. Okay, because number one is that you go there unprepared, you don't even have a proper price list, you don't even understand the Incoterms, you don't understand what CIF, FOB, X works, all this kind of stuff is, and then you just go and participate in the trade fair. Although you may get some grants from our trade, again, I will elaborate on that later on, but you may find that suddenly you're just flooded with inquiries and when you're back, in your business premises, you'll find that hey, you just are not ready to fulfill some of these orders. And when that happens, like I always tell or advise SMEs, is that there are very very little second chances when you're doing exporting because the export buyers are very discerning business people. So if you don't get it right the first time, if you're not prepared, and you've actually failed them in terms of you're not able to respond quickly enough to their inquiries, you can't give them the quotations, your follow-ups are very slow and all this kind of stuff, then they just shy away. And once they move out, then most probably they won't come back because you must remember that there are plenty of exporters out there today. So very very few second chances. Yeah. So, like to answer your questions, like in terms of the pitfalls, I think first thing is I would approach it differently by saying that sorry, excuse me, be prepared in terms of like do a situational analysis first, understand where your strengths are in terms of your products or even let's say if you're exporting services. Okay, so you have to really know your products very well. For example, it's like if you are, let's say if you are manufacturing a proton, then don't try to sell it in Germany or Japan, because for a start, because the thing,
Obviously, right?
because the thing is that I mean, like that these guys are, they sell marquees and they are at the epitome of the so-called product innovation when it comes to automobiles. So if you are in certain products, then you may want to capture the lower hanging fruits first. Go for those markets which you think that you are going to be more competitive, that you can find a niche and then you can look into that. Yeah. So understand your products very well. That means you must know that you are able to compete successfully in the local market first, because this will be one of the questions they'll be asking you. It's like, hey, if you have not been selling your products well in the local market, then of course, how are you going to be exporting your products, right? You can't, because you don't even have that competitive advantage, or let's say, what are your USPs, your unique selling propositions. Yeah. So know your products very well. These are all very important. And the thing is also, you have to understand, what are the regulations? For example, if you're selling food-related items, you could be subject to import licensing. There could be FDA regulations, or there could be certain, tariffs involved when you're exporting. Okay, so you have to know all these things, because otherwise you'll be just jumping in with your eyes closed, or it's just like saying that you're driving without navigation. So if you're not prepared and if you don't know all these things, then like I said again, you'll be surprised. So when you are trying to export your goods, you'll find that, hey, my goods can't enter because there are all these restrictions, there are regulations to comply with, or even once all these things come into the picture, it could actually inflate the cost of your export, because you have to pay for all these services involved in clearing the goods because of all these additional regulations, or requirements that are instituted by the importing country. So you have to be aware of all these things. Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing is that look at your internal capacity as well. Okay, because that's another pitfall. Because once you have, let's say, uh, taken your orders, okay, but if you have not allocated your internal capacity, so before you think about exporting, you have to determine, okay, how much am I prepared to allocate for export? Let's say 10% of my production for a start, 20% of my production, but you have to reserve that production for your exports, because otherwise, like I said, there will be plenty of problems and issues when the order starts coming in, because then you do not know, you're just grabbing more than you can swallow. And so what happens is that you can't fulfill. And when you can't fulfill, then you create a lot of havoc and disappointments. Okay. So allocation is important. You have to allocate, a certain part of your production. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's important. Yeah.
So I
And
want to pull up
yes.
I stop you for a while. I want to pull up a
Sure.
comment
Sure.
from Mike. First step is to have a unique product that international buyers wants to buy.
Yep. Yep.
True, right? That is the understanding your product. The first thing you got to know is, how does your product compete out
Yes,
there?
you like I said, you have to, it's KYP, know your products. You need to know what are your features of your product that stands out. Like you need to know what are your, like I say, your USPs. You need to know what are your competitive advantages. But having said that, it doesn't mean that you have to come up with completely state of the art type of products as well, because you see, even selling things like those days, like even if you're selling furniture, you're selling stationery, if you have a different design, you have something that is quite unique, or differentiated. There could be an appetite for your type of products. There'll be demand. Why? Because you see, like again, example. Let's say people have that misconception. Hey, I can't sell to China because products there are so much more competitive price wise. You can't compete because it's lower cost and all those things. True and not true. Meaning that you see, assuming that you are a retailer in China, if you are selling the same product which is made in China, that means there's very little differentiation. That means you are a retailer selling the Chinese made products. Your another retailer down the road who's your competitor is also selling the same thing, pretty much, let's say. But imagine, let's say now, because the world is the oyster right now, whereby it's actually you're able to now look into importing smaller quantities now. That's the advantage. What they call LCLs, loose containers. So imagine if you can start importing. Let's say I'm a retailer in China, I can start importing some products from Malaysia, which are different designs, or maybe like even when it comes to food, maybe it's some local based taste, which is again different, which you can't find in, let's say, not so commonly found in China. So that creates differentiation for me as a retailer now. So that means I would be looking for such kinds of products because I don't want to be a me too kind of business seller, right? Because I want to have products that are different so that I don't have to just compete on pricing alone. So that creates opportunities for exporters. And it's even better today, I think you all are fully aware of, because you even have now cross-border e-commerce. So that whereby I'll talk a bit more about that later on, where you can go B2C now, not even B2B. So those would be the advantages going forward, which 30 years ago we don't have. When we were selling those days, it's very difficult for us to sell B2C, I mean at that time, 30 years ago, but today it's easier for you to sell B2C now using the export strategy. Yeah. So
Okay.
I hope that answers Mike's question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he has a follow-up comment to that. We don't go in alone. We partner with a local in a country who knows all the import compliance requirements. Yeah.
Yes. Again, that is the common strategy, but at the same time, um, not necessarily as well, because like again, it depends. If let's say you have a strong, let's say for example, the buyers are usually importers and distributors. If you are trying to go in directly on your own, then yes, his comments will be very pertinent. But if let's say you just have an importer or distributor over there, normally they are already very well versed with all these regulations. And if you are selling, let's say if you're selling FOB, which means that you're not even taking care of freight and insurance and all those things. So all you need to do is like, so for some people who want to start out, if I don't want to go through the hassles of understanding so much of the regulations and all those things, then I'll just say, hey, okay, I just want to export FOB for a start. Okay. So the importer, the distributor over there will then they are the ones who are more experienced because they've been in this game much longer. So they will know what are the regulations, the import licensing, blah, blah, blah. So all you need to do is get your goods ready. Their forwarding guys will come, bring it to port, and your job is done. So that's on FOB basis, right? So that would be a start, before you start actually like going into the market yourself and to start maybe distributing. Of course, there are advantages of going in there, but normally for if you are just a nouveau exporter, I would advise you to just make it easier on yourself first because you don't have sufficient experience in exporting yet, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So we have another question. So this time from Patsy Lim. What is the best margin to allocate the cost for exporting?
Well, actually,
Is there a best margin?
there's not to say best margin because you see, again, it depends. The costing itself depends on all the various components. Like if you're just selling FOB, then you are not involved in the promotions of the product and all this kind of thing. So your costing will be just based on whatever, like your raw materials costs, everything, the whole works. Plus, let's say, assuming that there's some forwarding activities involved. So all that will be computed into your costing exercise. So I wouldn't say that there's an allocation of a cost for exporting. No, it's just that you will still do you have your cost sheet. You will still do your quotations and your costings, and you'll factor in all this additional cost. But um, if you are actually going to be going into a particular market and selling it directly, then that's a different scenario. Then you have to really go and study and do some research in terms of understanding, the distribution costs over there, the A&P costs and things like that. But like I said, normally you don't do that. But if you want to say, okay, the additional cost of for exporting, I would say would be like yes, costs in terms of participation in trade fairs, that will have to be allocated as well, as part of your initial exporting drive. So you will have to put aside a certain amount of money, which will then, of course, you can then distribute that in terms of your overall costs when you are computing your export prices. Rule of thumb, I would say, is that again, it depends on the volume of your exports. Initially, when you're starting small, the percentage may be higher. But if you are exporting, let's say once your export sales increases, then your percentage actually drops, Yeah. Uh,
So, so one of those things that I was very interested in when just now you mentioned, because we always think of exporting as in product-based businesses, right?
yep.
But you were
That's
talking
right. Yeah.
also, or you mentioned earlier in our conversation about exporting services.
Yeah.
So, how does that work for businesses that are offering services?
Okay. Yeah, that's another pertinent question. As you know, Martrade is actually aggressively trying to promote export of services. They even have a services export fund or grant which you can apply, for to offset or to subsidize your export drive. There are a lot of consultants, designers, whoever have already started going overseas. Even your IT people, they have been exporting the software services overseas. Engineering consultants, even lawyers have gone overseas. I mean, like whether it's in ASEAN countries and otherwise. So I mean, there's nothing to stop people from. Again, you just have to be familiar with the regulations there because in the case of professional services, some of them you have to obtain the licensing in those markets. So you need to find out whether you have to be uh, licensed over there before you can operate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise, like what was suggested by one of the participants is that then you look for a partner. You look for
a
let's say if
local
you're an
person.
yeah, if you're an accountant, maybe you may want to tie up with an accounting, services company. Let's say in Cambodia, if you want to export your services to Cambodia, and then because they would know all the regulations, and of course there's also language issues and stuff like that. Then you may want to partner with them, when you're going in there. Yeah. So there's nothing to stop people who are providing services to start looking at exporting their services. Yeah.
Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit. Just now you mentioned FOB, right? For those who are not familiar with it, can you please give a clarification? Because some people may be
Yeah.
very new to
Yeah.
the term. Yeah.
Sure. Well, all these terms are what they call international commercial terms. The abbreviation is called Incoterms, INCOTERMS, Incoterms. You can Google that, and basically these are standard nomenclature. Like for example, like when you say CIF, it means includes your freight, includes your insurance as well. If it's FOB, it doesn't include your insurance and freight. So you just get your goods ready, and you just have to load it to port. That's all. That so that your responsibilities ends there. And if it is X works, that means it's only at factory. I don't even load it to port, so I'm not responsible to load it to port. So it's just at the factory, and then your buyers will arrange for the forwarding people to come and collect from your factory. So the quotations will be different. If you're quoting CIF, of course you've got to factor in the freight costs and the insurance and all the handling charges, until the goods reach the destination of your buyer. So all this will affect your pricing, your export pricing. Yeah. So these are just terms which you'll get familiar with. Once you begin the exports. But if you don't worry too much about the forwarding side because if you get a good forwarding company, they'll be able to help you, on all these aspects, to help you to handle the shipment of the goods, okay, the logistics side. Your focus is still predominantly on the production of your items, but of course, uh, in terms of the preparation, which I think we mentioned earlier, is like it's good to start once if you're serious about exporting after you have allocated, once you have determined, first thing is to try to determine which market that you want to sell to after you've decided on your the SKUs. Start off with just a smaller range of products first, your so-called your prime products, and then identify the market, like maybe the country or region. Don't try to be too shotgun in your approach and try to cover everything because your resources are limited when you start off. So focus on a particular region or one country and things like that, and then see how your products are able to penetrate. Then you go from there. So once you have identified the products, the market, the countries, then the next thing is look at the internal, which I mentioned before. It's very important to make sure that you prepare yourselves internally. So you need to have assign or dedicate an export coordinator, someone who is going to be the so-called the PIC, the person in charge. Why? Because the export coordinator will be the one who will be liaising with your potential buyers from overseas, answering all the emails, sending samples, coordinating with production, chasing them to make sure that the production is on schedule. Because you must remember that for exporting, like I said earlier, usually is by letters of credit, and if it's by letters of credit, there's a latest shipment date. So all that becomes very important, right? So which means that you must make sure that your export coordinator will be able to coordinate and liaise with all these different departments in-house, production, shipping or logistics. So all that will be done, and also the banking side, because later on you have to negotiate your LCs once you have shipped out your products. So you need to, like I say, it will be advisable to designate someone, specifically just to handle your exports. It doesn't have to be a new staff; it can be an existing staff as well. But just have a dedicated person. Yeah.
Okay, so there's another comment from Mike again. On pricing, we prefer to be the best answer to a niche market rather than a mass market, where we can't dominate market share and margins. Yeah, that's really a smart strategy, because
Yep.
when you go
right.
mass market, it's a different strategy altogether, right? Wouldn't you agree? Seng Hooi?
Totally agree. You have to find, like I said, you have to find your competitive advantage. I'll give you an example. Those days when we were exporting stationery, at that time in the 90s, when we were exporting stationery, the big boys were not China. The big boys were actually Indonesia. At that time, because they've got massive paper mills. They've got fully integrated plants from paper all the way to the finished product. And we were just a converter, because we were buying paper and converting. So we couldn't compete with the big boys. I mean, for those people who buy container loads, their pricing is definitely going to be more attractive. I mean, from the Indonesian exporters, because we are converters, and they have a fully integrated plant, like I said, from raw materials. Yeah. So how did we tackle this? And then so when we look for customers, we don't look for those customers who can buy 20 containers, because we know that we will not be cost efficient and price competitive, okay, when it comes to those kind of buyers. So we look for buyers who buy 3 containers, 4 containers, 5 containers, example, and we give them the option of, like, see, when you sell to the big boys, because they want long run productions, that's why they can give you cheap, very low pricing. So like what Mike is saying, niche, is that we're saying, hey, okay, now for 1 container, I can give you 4 designs instead of 1 design per container. So of course, these smaller importers love that, because now instead of just getting 1 design per container, now they're able to get 4 or 5 designs. So that was our differentiation. So we're able to differentiate ourselves and offer that. So that means you need to know where your competitive advantage is, or like what he says, look for that niche, and then to aggressively have your strategy to pursue that particular niche. Because then also you're not just competing on price alone, right? Because you're not a big enough player until you've reached that size. When you have the economies of scale, then maybe you have a slightly different strategy. But otherwise, for a start, he's absolutely right. Look for niches, look for that particular segment where you can have that competitive advantage. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I want to come back to was, back in the days before the pandemic happened, it would be so easy for someone to just go to a trade fair, go to an expo overseas, right? Get on the plane and get to that place and start showcasing your products. But today, things are opening up, of course, but there's also such things as virtual expos.
Exactly, yeah.
So does this make it easier for people to showcase what they have if they want to really get into the overseas market? Or is it going to be a little bit more formidable?
Okay. Again, there are various schools of thought. I always like to look at things from a half full angle, or maybe to me, anything that adds another option is always a plus. Okay. Physical trade fairs, of course, have been around for a long time. I mean, people are aware, but again, there are also a lot of people who have been burned by going in unprepared, because it's a very costly exercise to go to physical trade fairs. Uh, First thing is that my advice to you all is that before you select, because you do not know which is the right physical fair for you, you may probably be spending 30, 40,000 to participate in the trade fair because as an exhibitor, okay? Because you're going to bring another person with you, because it cannot be just one person manning the booth, and then plus the rental of the booth, plus the airfare, plus blah, 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 and all this. Although you can apply for MBG, it can come up to 30, 40,000 easily, okay, easily for one trip, okay? So my advice is that before you select the fair to be an exhibitor, go as a visitor first. That is cheaper. Go and visit, just bring your bags and go and visit and scout and see which physical fair is suitable for you. Then only you decide to be an exhibitor. Because it's cheaper to just pay for a flight. You can fly, cheaper airlines, and you can go there, just spend, 2, 3 days, walk around the fair just to get a feel. So just scout around, and then if you find that the fair is suitable, then maybe the next year you may want to then participate, physically as an exhibitor. Okay, the advantages of virtual fairs today is that now, because it's cheaper to be participating, to be an exhibitor in a virtual fair. So now you actually, with that same amount of money, now you can stretch it in different continents, in different markets. Now you can say, hey, okay, now if I'm willing to allocate X amount, let's say I'm willing to allocate 30,000, to participate in fairs now. With the virtual fairs, you may be able to do 2, 3 instead of 1. You know what I'm saying? Because the cost is lower. Yeah. So again, but of course, when this pandemic actually subsides, when things are now becoming more endemic, when traveling is it's going to be more fluid again, I think physical fairs will still be there. I'm not saying that, but now there's another option with the virtuals as well. So that, in fact, creates the opportunity for beginners, who may feel that, hey, okay, I may just try it out with a virtual fair and see the response. Or you can do both. It's just like now for the local market, you've got omni channels, right? You've got physical, you've got brick and mortar, and you've got online. So you could do physical and online, depending on, maybe for certain fairs which are big fairs, and you feel that it's more lucrative for you. You may want to go physical. Then a fair that you may want to explore. Let's say maybe I want to explore the Middle East market, but I'm very gung ho about the European market, so I'm going to the Frankfurt fairs, physical. But then for the market, the trade fairs in the Middle East, I may say, okay, let me start with a virtual fair and see how the response is. Yeah. So I think the beauty today is that you have that option, to go omni. You've got physical and you also can go virtual, both. So it's always like what Jim Collins says is the theory of the and, not necessarily or, right? It can be virtual and
And
physical.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's both, right? Why not? I mean, if you have
Yeah.
resources, you have
Correct.
the time, you can manage, you can
Yeah.
do both. You can send people over to a physical one while you can do the virtual ones.
Yeah, you can do the
So
virtual, like
yeah,
what we say is with a different fare as well, just
yeah,
to try it out and that kind of
yeah.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to know is also this: what are some of the initiatives or incentives that Martrade has? And I'm sure people never ask these questions, but I'm sure at the back of their minds, like, okay, what
Okay.
can we what can we expect?
Okay. First thing I would like to continue to advocate over and over and over is that if you are interested to be an exporter, please register and become a member of Matrix for a start. It's FOC, okay? There are a lot of things on the Matrix website. I will highlight some of them to you all. First thing is like, because they are really doing a great job. I mean, I'm not trying to oversell Martrade. They're not paying me for this, but because I've utilized their services those days when I started exporting. Okay, from the grants, like what you mentioned, they have the MDG, the Market Development Grants, which actually subsidizes your costs of participating in trade fairs or your marketing missions. Again, of course, you need to provide the supporting documentation, but it's a breeze. It's not difficult at all. You can do that quite easily. And also now they have Services Exporters Fund. So all these grants are available. They also provide training. They have industry reports. They've got business matching, whereby inquiries that comes through them they channel to you. So please register and become a member of Martrade. Okay, and not only that, they have trade commissioners that are based all over the world. Those days when I used to do exporting, I would definitely get the help of a trade commissioners. They call them TCs. You can email them. All their emails are on the Martrade website. You can actually get them to even help you to do some market research. Okay, and they are very responsive. That's one. Two is that whenever I go to a country where they have a TC, I will always visit them, introduce myself and my products to them, give them my catalogs at that time. And sometimes even like after a fair, I'll leave some samples there because they also have a display booth in their Martrade offices to display some samples of Malaysian-made products. So do all that. Make full use of the trade commissioners. The training programs. The training programs now, Martrade has got a lot of webinars currently, to expose you to different markets. If you go into the Martrade website, you can see that. You can also see that they have special trainings for certain types of entrepreneurs. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they are now trying to encourage women own companies to export. So if you are 51% owned, you are eligible to get those kind of help. If you are a youth also, I think between the ages of, I think below, I think 40s or something, I can't remember the exact age, but the thing is
You can
that
check at the website, right?
you can check on the Martrade website,
Okay.
youths and women entrepreneurs, and of course Bhumi Putras as well. So they're targeting these three groups. Okay, so if you belong to these three groups, please go onto the Martrade website, get all this information from there, from training, workshops, how to go about the do's and don'ts. You can get a lot of this help from the Martrade website. Like I said, and if you need specific assistance from the TCs, email the TCs. Yeah. So the grants are there for the taking. By all means, they encourage. In fact, we do since when I was exporting, I always apply for the MDG grant, and we have never been rejected. But of course, there's a cap. There's a limit to the amount for each applicant. I think so as long as you don't exceed that, you're fine. So that's a very helpful financial assistance. It's a matching grant, 1-for-1, which I think it's fair because you also have to be serious enough to put in some of your funds. So it's a matching grant. Yeah.
And have some skin in the game, right? They can't be giving you this money.
Exactly. Because this all excludes those people who are just quote unquote trying to have a holiday and just take the opportunity to apply for the grant, and then but they actually, so they are quite serious. You have to take a picture of yourself in the booth and all these kind of things, because to show that you're not just going there for a holiday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to pull up the Martrade website. I mean, both of us have nothing to do with Martrade, but like you say, it's a helpful
definitely
resource. It's a
please
resource,
go
right?
into the website www.martrade.gov.my. I think there are a lot of useful information that you can get from there, which I think will be very helpful. Yeah, so do not miss out on that opportunity. And like what I said just now, even if you talk about exporting, it is now grown to such an extent that you see the government is very serious about promoting exports amongst SMEs. You saw from the 12 MP report that they would like SMEs to now contribute a higher percentage for exports. Currently we're doing about maybe 19%. The target for the 12 MPs that they hope that SMEs can contribute to a quarter, 25% of total export. So you can see that the government is definitely very serious in trying to promote exports for obvious reasons, because the Malaysian market is just not big enough. And like I said to you, the earlier reasons, diversification, the export, the forex hedging, all those whole works, because that allows our SMEs to compete. Because also now you must remember that gone were the days when you have a protected market where you have import duties that are high. Now with all the FTAs, I call that the alphabet soup, your FTAs, So, because with all the FTAs, whether it's ASEAN, China, whether it's, AFTA, which is all the ASEAN countries. So even, although we have not really fully ratified the RCEP yet, which is going to be the biggest FTA soon, but you already have ASEAN China, which means goods from China are already coming in practically duty-free, okay? Whether you like it or not. For the ASEAN countries, the same thing. Then you have, Australia, New Zealand, FTA, you've got Japan, you've got the other countries, with Pakistan and other places. So if you go to the Matrade website, all that will be there, okay? You can see all the different FTAs and all the regulations there. Another thing you need to know is also that when you're doing your market research, you may need to understand what is a HS code, which is actually a specific code given to your products. So in order to check on the code, go to the customs website. The customs website have what they call a HS Tariff Explorer, where you just need to do is key in the HS code. If you don't know the HS code, talk to your forwarder. They'll be able to help you. Or you can just go into the HS code finder, or just key in the products. There's also a description by items of products. So just key in, let's say, shoes, and then they'll show you the different types of shoes and what is the code and all things. Because when you're exporting, you'll always have to use that code. And that code will also be needed when you're talking to your buyers, okay? Because that also helps you to do some market research. Like, let's say if you want to know in a particular market, like how much are they importing, okay? One of the tricks of exporting, which I normally do in the past, is that it's like, if you want to know how easy it is to export to a particular country, look at their imports. Look at what are they importing. Say for your products, if you can, once you know your HS code, try to see whether you can get information in terms of import data. That means if they're already importing similar type products as yours, that means you know that they already have a certain appetite for importing this product. So it makes it easier for you. That means you know that, okay, this is the size of imports for certain types of shoes, for example, or furniture or whatever. Yeah. So once you know that for that country, then you know, hey, okay, it gives you maybe a better assessment on the export capability for your business.
So it means that there really is a market for what you want to export to them.
Exactly.
Right?
There's already an existing market for similar type products. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going in by yourself.
Otherwise, you
could be the pioneer, but it could be
could be the pioneer, but you could be tougher. Exactly. So that means there are more obstacles in place. But maybe, of course, you may be wreaking a bigger premium, but again, it could work both ways. So you may need to have deeper pockets. A longer time frame to see success.
Yeah. So I want to pull up this. Just like I mentioned the customs, right? Customs
Yes.
website where they can find
website. HS Explorer. Yeah. HS Explorer.
HS Explorer.
Yeah, and then very easy, everything is there. And then the other thing, just now when you're talking about services, don't forget, even you see like people like Nelson, they have actually exported their franchise. Mary Brown's, they have exported their franchise. So you can actually export franchise as well. It means successful Malaysian franchise, you can actually export them, Middle East, or even like I think T Life and all those things, they've also exported their franchise as well.
But one thing I also want to mention is that actually Malaysian products are actually valued highly out there. Sometimes as Malaysians, we look at our products like, well, we're a Malaysian product made in Malaysia, right? So we don't take them as seriously. But I think other nations out there, when they say, oh, made in Malaysia, it really has a credibility of its own.
Yes. Yes.
And that's something that maybe as Malaysians we don't really see because we don't talk to people out there. But once we talk to people out there, they say, oh, the product's made in Malaysia. They really feel that they can trust the product in,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You know, I
quality
mean,
wise.
yeah, we just you're right. You're spot on. Like for example, when for those people who are in the garments or apparel business, the made in Malaysia label commands a certain premium compared to the other countries. Okay, because usually it's like a little bit higher end. Same thing with stationery products. So the made in Malaysia thing, even furniture and all those things, because they actually like the buyers like our consistency to quality. So although the Chinese products are cheaper, but they don't mind. Like I say, one is they want the differentiation earlier, then the other one is like what you just pointed out is that they find that the quality management of Malaysian exporters are, or in general, I would say in general, better than some of these emerging economies. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, we do have that slight edge of premium when it
Competitive
comes
edge,
to
right? By
correct
the
when it
by
comes
virtue
to
that it's Malaysian.
made it. In fact, some people just purposely come to Malaysia to look for made in Malaysia products. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I believe that we have a ton of products and services that are really useful. I mean, many years ago, I know of a manufacturer. She made plastic household ware,
yep, yep,
like those plastic cups
yes,
and plates
yep,
and all that.
yep, yep, yep,
And she was exporting to
yeah,
African
yeah,
nations. Just
yeah,
loved plasticware. And here
yeah.
we're like considered a plasticware, slightly less premium kind of products. But it depends on which country you're going to. For certain countries, those are really valued.
Yeah, exactly. I think just to give you some examples of what Matrix, what they offer in terms of the webinars. They I think recently they even have something like selling to Walmart in America. So you see like all these things are good pointers where and it's all usually FOC lah, because it's the whole objective is to educate our exporters. So
Yeah.
all these things, market finder, like how to use Google 2.0 to improve your export. So they do conduct nowadays. They're trying to use digital tools as well. So I mean, please go, like I said, register with Matrix, and once they know that you are there, like they will try to match you with all these trade inquiries that come in. Also, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are almost at the top of the hour, but I have this question. I'm not too sure
Sure.
whether we can answer this. Patsy
Yeah.
asks, do you know how much does a virtual trade show cost at this moment? I think it varies, right?
It varies. It varies. Yeah, it
Yeah.
varies. Like for example, currently, in fact, right now the Canton Fair is on, which is virtual. Yeah, but that is more for to promote Chinese exporters. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So, but the thing is that so you can actually it's a fraction of it's still cheaper than it varies. It could be 10,000. It could be I mean again like what you say. There's no hard and fast rule, but it's still cheaper than participating physically.
Yeah. But the only thing that maybe is a concern is the engagement level. Because sometimes in
Yes.
a face-to-face setting, you get to talk to the person, you get to see
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
person's
Yeah.
body language, whether the person likes or dislikes a certain product
Yeah.
you're showing.
Yeah.
But virtual, I have been in some virtual fairs where it's quite hard because you don't really see much. Like you can't touch and feel that thing that you want to check
You're
out, right?
true. I think that's a very fair comment. Of course, the preference is still the physical fairs, which I think, like I said just now, you will come back in terms of popularity because number one, certain types of products, like I say, you're selling machines. Of course, they want to look at the machines, things like that. They want to have a feel of some of the products, which you can't do through virtual fairs. The virtual fairs will probably be complementing. I think it's going to be around, but it won't substitute your physical fairs. The physical fairs will still be in place. But it's just that you must make sure that because physical fairs can be a very costly exercise. So if you're not well prepared, if you don't do those things which I mentioned earlier, like get your house in order, prepare, make sure that you have all your pricing there, because you just need to give them some indicative price. Sometimes for these people, they just want to know, hey, what's your price? Of course, you don't have to quote the most competitive price, but at least you have to give them an indicative price when they're coming to your booth. You just have to give them. You can't just say, hey, wait until I get back and then I'll send you a quote. Again, it depends on the items, because sometimes they just want to have a feel like. So when you have samples there, you must have your prices, and they'll say, hey, how much will this cost? FOB. So you need to be able to give them, so that they can get a feel of what your pricing is, because a lot of these buyers, they don't want to waste time if your price is just so far off. They're not interested to explore further. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, all this are very important. So, and you see, like now the export side has actually grown by leaps and bounds, and in significance, that there are success stories on the Martrade website that you can see, which you can also read about. Their journey, the export journey. At the same time, you see even I think certain banks have also sponsored Export Excellence Award. So now you actually have Export Excellence Awards. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, is Stanchart. So you can see that, and they work with Martrade. So you see the importance now of growing the export business. Yeah. I want to maybe just mention about the myths. Sometimes people have these misconceptions. It's like, oh, no, exports is for the bigger boys. It's I'm too small to be considering exports. Please do not have that misconception, because you can always export in a small way and then grow and expand from there. Because nowadays you do not have to export by container loads. You can always export, like even B2C, cross-border e-commerce. You can still sell small quantities as well, and that's still exports. And a lot of people are doing that. You have FBA, fulfillment by Amazon, whereby you don't even have to worry about fulfillment anymore. Nowadays, you can just send 5 cartons to their warehouse. Let's say you are targeting the Canadian market or the US market. You can just sell, by sending your 5 cartons to Amazon, and that's it. They take care of the rest. So all you need to do is produce, pack, send it there. So you see, now the whole process has been facilitated in such a way that it's become so much easier compared to 30 years ago. You've got more options now. All this fulfillment, which has been done. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so
much. That's one misconception.
Yeah.
Another misconception before we go off is that I think I would like to say is that some people say, hey, I'm not interested in doing exporting because it's too cumbersome. And then secondly is that the margins are not so good. Again, yes and no. Margins are not so good, yes, but that's because you compensate that with volume. Okay, and again, like I mentioned earlier, the diversification, customer and risk diversification. So take that into, you have to look at things in a totality, because you've got a bigger market out there compared to just Malaysia. Yeah. So don't be discouraged by things like, oh, I need to be of a certain size, or the margins are lower. In fact, I can tell you that a lot of people who have exported small and medium-sized enterprises, today it's actually the exports that have given them the greater impetus for growth, and they've become public listed companies today mainly because of their exports, because the scope for expansion is so much greater.
Well, that's an interesting point. For those who intend to grow bigger or grow big, start with try some export strategy you will have in mind and grow from there. So that's another way of growing. Okay. So we are really at the top of the hour. Before we leave, we had an interesting conversation. I have yet to dig into so many other things which I wanted to, but we know, right? Conversations are like this. We get into some interesting part where we want to talk about, and that's where we also answer questions from people who are watching us. And of course, if you're watching this on the replay, of course, that's the part that you don't get to ask Seng Hooi any more questions, but you can always email him. So how can people contact you? Final one. Final question.
Okay, you can reach me via my email,
Okay.
which is yeoh@gmail.com. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe you can just type it in, and
Yeah.
then yeah, they can reach me there. Yeah,
yosh@gmail.com. Okay.
yeah.
So
Uh,
this is the email. Yeah.
yep, you can reach me there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm
So I
sure there
hope.
are some questions that they are still thinking about, and then they may want to reach out to you
Yeah,
for further
yeah.
clarification.
Sure, sure. I hope that they've. Well, I enjoyed the session with you, Krista. I hope they have benefited from it. Like from the session, like what you said is that you can't cover exporting in 1 hour because it's the topic is just too diverse. So we are just skimming the
Yeah,
surface.
we're just
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
people the 101, right? The 101, right?
That's
Even
right. That's
101
right.
is not even gone
Not
into
not
50%.
not really, not really.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's just skimming the surface so that certain touch points for them, so that they know where to go. Like for example, they know what HS codes are. They know to go to Martrade. What to look out
Incoterm.
for, Incoterms, to
Yeah,
be prepared before they embark on their export strategy. It's the same thing. Have an export marketing plan, just like your normal marketing plan. All your 5Ps, 6Ps, whatever still applies. It's the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So final comment pulling up, Patsy says, great, thanks for the sharing. We'll contact you soon. Yes, go and contact you. He's a great resource. So that's the wonderful thing about live sessions is that we really get direct contact with that person, and we get to follow up further, right? So once more, thank you so much, Seng Hooi, for being part of this show. And I believe that even as I talk to all my guests, I learn so much. There are so many things out there that we don't know, right? And so many things out there that we should know. And that's where I bring on different guests every single time to talk about a business or a marketing topic. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending your Saturday with us. For those who are watching this on the replay, welcome to the replay and have fun. When you're on the replay, you can scrub and you can find the segments that you've missed, and you can go back and re-listen to those parts. But thank you so much once more, Seng Hooi, for being
Yeah,
part of the show.
you're most welcome. And just a parting message that you people who are doing exporting, you have a lot of wonderful and interesting experiences. I would say, I've when I was in Jeddah for a trade fair, I have seen some really strange things as well. I mean, so you have to you're exposed to different cultures. I think it's beyond words. So I think you all will really enjoy this export journey, and I hope many of you will start with the first few steps, and I'm sure you'll reach your destination when it comes to your export success. So thank you very much once again, Krista, and I hope all of you have a nice day, and stay safe. Yeah, take care.
Yeah. Happy weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
But before that, one more thing before that. For those of you who want to know more and just joined us and all that, just follow our Facebook page. We stream live. I try to stream live every fortnight so that I can bring new topics.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So just follow us, or you can get updates by signing up for our newsletter. So there's also a good place where if you forget, I'll update you. I'll update you when there's a new topic and a new guest on our live stream. So thank you once more, everyone, and have a great Saturday. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.